But Nick has been to Newcastle to see a plant which is at its best right now.
Big, bold and beautiful, their sumptuous heads bobbing about in autumn, chrysanthemums have it all, especially at this time of year when their earthy colours sit so perfectly with the tones of autumn. They remind me of my mum, who used to grow them en masse in a polytunnel when I was a kid. And the scent still intoxicates me today. So to be surrounded by them is a real treat. Hall's of Heddon Nursery has been in the family for over 100 years, and there's nothing David Hall doesn't know about one of my favourite flowers. A great chance for me to revel in some chrysanthemum chat. These growing beds look spectacular. How many different varieties have you got growing here?
At the moment, it's about 135, 140 different varieties, 8,500 plants.
I think one of the unfortunate things about chrysanthemums is they get a bad rap, but actually as a garden plant, they're extraordinarily useful, and I think they deserve a renaissance.
They're very valuable. There's not much will give you this degree of colour this late in the season.
Exactly, and as you say, the colour range is just extraordinary. I think one of the things about chrysanthemums is lots of people just get a little bit overwhelmed by the sort of sheer range of groups and types. Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah, you could break it down into 4 basic groups. Standing here amongst some spray chrysanthemums, one of the easiest types for people new to chrysanthemums to grow. But then you've got also the bloom chrysanthemums here, single individual blooms at the top of a stem where you've got to work at them to get the best out of them. You've also got the Korean rubellums, the more hardier types that could be left in the garden, worked in amongst a herbaceous border. And then the charm chrysanthemums, which can be perfectly easily grown in pots to give you a late season. And with the right varieties, some of those look absolutely superb right through November into December.
How many things are coming into full bloom in October and November? Just about everything's done, isn't it? Yet these plants are still providing fabulous colour in your borders. We've come out into these beds, and I think these demonstrate some of the best of your spray chrysanthemums, the sort of good garden varieties. And this is a particular favourite of yours, right?
It is. It's a variety I remember as a young lad, a variety called Chatsworth. It's one of the earliest spray chrysanthemums.
I mean, it's fabulous colour. There's something really interesting about the fact that that kind of bronzy orange brings out a certain blue note in the foliage. And I can just imagine this sat kind of front or mid-border, load of autumn shrubs and grasses nearby. I think people sort of forget these are just good herbaceous plants that can go into the garden. And I have to say as well, just here, this is Southway Sheba, a lovely plant and also really useful. Having that kind of open flower means it's brilliant for pollinators as well. Now, in terms of keeping them happy and healthy, what's your ideal soil?
Well, main thing is a well-drained soil, and they definitely don't like sitting in wet soils. They'll struggle then. As much sun as possible. All of these beds will get a dressing of just fish blood and bone meal at the start of the season, just prior to planting.
So it's almost the same as growing dahlias in many ways, I guess.
To a degree, yeah, except they're a bit more frost tolerant than dahlias, tubers would be.
David, we've come under cover to look at these bloom chrysanthemums. The protection overhead means that you can sort of get perfect blooms for cutting. And to do that, you use a technique just to focus all the energy on a single bloom with disbudding.
Well, we'd be taking a shoot like that when the bud's about that size, and then actually working down through, taking all the little side shoots out of it all the way down to a point where you can, then all the energy's into there. If we weren't to do that, what you end up is getting something like this one. The flowers, individual flowers will be crowding each other out. So disbudding, all the energy's gone into the one bloom, so you get much better form and a much bigger flower.
When it comes to choosing hardy chrysanthemums for the border, there are 2 types which I always recommend, the Koreans and the rubellums. Now this is a particular favourite of mine, I have to say. It's called Mary Stoker, and I think it just embodies the season. It's got that sort of beautiful autumnal peachy tone, and then it sort of fades into yellow in the centre. And I think that colour just associates so well with some of the other kind of autumn tones, the darker oranges and burgundies. Just looks perfect. This is Nell Gwyn, and it's one of the Korean forms. A bit like Mary Stoker, which is one of the rubellum forms, you can buy both of them in 2 or 3 litre containers in the garden centre, so you've got an instant bulky plant. So many of these Korean and rubellum types tend to be in those typical kind of autumn tones, oranges and burgundies, but using Nell Gwyn, it's got this sort of antique pink note to it, plus the yellow centre, plus that ring of sort of near white or yellow. And so I think this colour and this form really helps extend the idea of summer all the way into autumn. And something really special about this plant as well is all of the different stages of flowering. So you start out with these tight green buds, then move on to partially open with just a little bit of pink showing. Then you see the yellow backs of the petals, and then finally it becomes full blown. And you just end up with this gorgeous effect across the whole plant. This is one of the charm chrysanthemums, and this particular cultivar is called Bravo. Just look at the colour of this. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And these are the kind of chrysanthemums that you'll find available in garden centres from late summer into early autumn. They're incredibly compact and they can stay in the ground year round, so they stay really, really short. And the way I like to use them is in association with other perennials just started to fade in autumn time, so you get those yellows and oranges with this at the front, mixing up those autumn colours. I think it's absolutely perfect. For years, dahlias were in the doldrums, but they managed to make a comeback. And I think with all the qualities of chrysanthemums, it's about time they made a triumphant return to our gardens.